I'm back, sort of. Yeah. Sorry, folks, no pre-scripted subplot with supporting characters today. That's because I had to lay the entire staff off because I started my new job, right? Remember? Yeah? Question: what do you prefer more, history or video games? Because we're about to combine the two and discuss the history of video games. Where do we start? How about here? This is called a CRT television. It was our portal to a dimension of low resolution entertainment. It would also make you go blind if you sat too close to the screen. At least, that's what my mammy used to tell me. Another fun fact, each one of these weighed in at exactly 700 pounds, which is why you would find most of them on the living room floor. The CRT design changed over several decades. They eventually abandoned the wooden frame and turn-dial channel selectors, but the heavy internal components and low resolution remained the same until the turn of the century, when flat-screen HD TVs became commercially available. All video game consoles discussed today would have been played on these old-school TVs. Many retro titles are available on newer platforms, but experiencing games in this format is a drastic departure from what was experienced on a CRT television. Pixels are crisper, frame rates are higher, and generally speaking, colors are brighter on modern TVs. The first home console to bring video games to living rooms around the world was the Magnavox Odyssey. Coming in at a whopping $99, it was expensive, because that would make it $627 in today's dollars. Although the technology was revolutionary, it was bland by current standards, with just one graphical layout and a monochrome color scheme. Color overlays were offered to entice anyone turned off by the two-tone visuals, but graphics were not the only thing this console lacked. The controllers didn't even have buttons. I know that's not a big deal to you kids being surrounded by touchscreens and all, but the first video game console not having buttons was unfathomable. Instead, controllers for the Odyssey had turn dials to determine movement and action. The game library was extremely limited. You basically had one game and the color overlays just changed the rules of that one game. Think different variations of Pong. In the end, the Magnavox Odyssey found itself only within the wealthiest of households, with only 1% of Americans having one of these consoles in their home. That brings us to the debut of the Atari 2600. And this time, we get buttons. Wait, just one? You're kidding, right? That's right, folks. One glorious button and a joystick so we can drive cars and fly planes and Pitfall. There was a vast improvement on the number of pixels that could be displayed on the screen at one time. And did I mention we've got color? You can tell they were really excited about that last part by the box art of virtually every game on the system. Notable games included Pole Position and Breakout. The library was extensive compared to that of the Magnavox Odyssey, but many of the watered-down arcade ports like Pac-Man, Joust, and Space Invaders disappointed customers due to the stark graphical contrast between the 2600 versions and their arcade counterparts. Waves of customers around the world demanded refunds. This is one reason the Atari 2600 crashed the home console market hard in 1983. I don't know this personally because I was a mere fetus at this point, but this is all according to video game historians. Is that a thing? Because I would love that job. Not far behind Atari's debut on the scene, Nintendo showed up to reinvigorate the video game craze of the 80s with their Japanese Famicom. An American branch of the company followed suit by introducing the NES to their domestic market. Both were a near instant success. Magnavox and Atari may have introduced the concept of the home console, but Nintendo made it a staple of contemporary American society. Virtually every American household with a child had an NES back then. The inclusion of Super Mario Bros. Duck Hunt and the included Zapper ensured that you could have plenty of fun right out of the box without acquiring any additional games in your initial purchase. Graphically, more pixels and colors could be displayed, and dots on your screen finally began to resemble something closer to real-life source material. I guess. In terms of sound, you now had backing tracks to fill the noiseless void between the beeps and bops you created through in-game actions like running, jumping, and punching your way through bad guys. Don't yet grasp what a huge improvement this was? Go back and play virtually any game on the 2600 and then pop in an NES cart for comparison. A soundtrack to your adventure makes all the difference. And Nintendo's 8-bit tracks rock so hard I listened to them just for fun. I'm pretty sure most of my car playlist is old school video game music. Nintendo's success eventually caught the attention of several other companies wanting a share of the market. One company in particular set their sights on the NES and consequently set off the first console war. Sega was no stranger to video games, having produced hundreds of arcade cabinets and 2 home consoles of their own. This time, however, they sought to overtake Nintendo's market share by offering a console with superior graphics and improved sound. Nintendo responded by releasing the Super Nintendo, or SNES. Both the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo propelled the video game industry into the 16-bit era. What's the difference between 16-bit and 8-bit? Technically, I couldn't tell you. All I know is the Super Nintendo is my favorite console of all time. The Genesis was pretty good too, with exclusive titles like Sonic and Streets of Rage. It's also worth mentioning that the Sega console had a far greater lineup of shoot-'em-ups. After the 16-bit era, Nintendo and Sega decided to jump into the realm of 3D gaming with their release of the Nintendo 64 and Sega Saturn. They would both be disappointed, however, when another electronics company took over sales with the release of the Sony PlayStation. Exclusive titles like Metal Gear Solid broke barriers and convinced game developers that adult consumers were the untapped market of limitless money-making potential. They were right. The Sony PlayStation became the best-selling console of all time among adults. We'll stop there, as everything released after this point isn't really considered retro, at least not yet. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I will catch you next time.